what is coming up.
Think about it.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're the moratorium. I mean, certainly we want people to get involved.
There's something coming up on August 13th at the Mission Neighborhood Center from 6 to 8, a fundraiser for the Mission Moratorium. August 13th from 6 to 8, we're going to raise $250,000 to defeat the $3 million campaign they're going to spend against us.
All right, thank you.
And in September, there's going to be a hearing on the Bryant Street, the 2000 block of Bryant Street, where they want to tear down the whole block, which is now artist studios and stuff, and they want to build condos. And there's a hearing on September 10th, where we want to mobilize hundreds of people to be at that hearing and do what we did at the Board of Supervisors. And if necessary, if they vote in favor of it, we want to shut down the Planning Commission. Yeah.
All right, thank you. Our next speaker is Farrah Weiss. Amy is running for mayor, and Amy has supported individual and collective well-being through research, education, and action for nearly 20 years. She started a nonprofit called Neighbors Developing Divisadero, which supports inclusive and sustainable neighborhood development. Amy is now running for mayor with a Yes in My Backyard campaign. It's a solutions-oriented approach to the issues and challenges facing San Francisco. Amy.
So I'm literally throwing my hat in the ring, right? My YIMBY hat, and you might wonder, why is she wearing that hat? Does that make her a joke? Why is she doing that? Well, guess what? Every time I wear this hat, somebody on the street wonders about it. And they say, what does your hat mean? And they say, have you heard of a NIMBY? NIMBY is saying not in my backyard to something. And you know, it's important for us as advocates for social equity and culture in our neighborhoods to be able to say no to things. We have to. But then we have to not just stop at the no, we have to figure out, because we live in a democracy. And so we have to say, what is our righteous and strategic yes? And that's why I'm running for mayor of San Francisco. And I feel really fired up after listening to Tommi talk. That was great. And who wants Bernie Sanders to come here to San Francisco and give a speech? Yeah, so we're excited about that, right? And we're going to go to Redmond and help out with their mayor's race. So if you get involved with the mayor's race here, he might actually come out in support of us, because we are the epicenter of this contract economy. We are the epicenter of the income inequity that he's talking about, right? He's saying, you know, 1/10 of 1% owns as much in America as the bottom 90%. Well, we're the epicenter of that in the country, right, in San Francisco. So it's really important for us to not say when Bernie shows up and says, are you ready for a political revolution? And Ed Lee, though. I mean, it's Ed Lee. I'm going to beat Ed Lee. No, we can't say that, because that's what everybody's saying about Hillary. And I'm not putting myself on par with Bernie Sanders, you know, because of his amazing experience, but I have the same kind of experience of the last 20 years working for the same kind of issues that he was, and it's the same kind of dichotomy of a Hillary and Bernie kind of situation right now in San Francisco with Ed Lee, and then it's also Francisco, and Stewart has stepped up too, and this guy Reed Martin. And I think that it's really important for us to remember that the only way we're going to win this mayor's race is if we do what progressives initially intended to do with ranked choice voting, and we fill those 3 spots. And everybody can choose their order, but that's how we actually have a shot to do this. And you might also think, oh, this guy's Stewart, why is he running? He's a joke. But guess what? About 40,000 people read his blog every week. And he might be able to activate a lot of people that don't normally vote. And you're saying that these votes are going to be decided on, you know, 6,000, 10,000, 15,000 votes. Well, then we actually have a shot, right? And when you think, I want you to sit back for a second and think about 4 more years of Ed Lee. That's how I felt in November, right? I was feeling that kind of despair after Prop G lost and after the Compost Chew blood sport, money sport that happened, and it wasn't feeling good for me. And for me, the only antidote to despair is actually to take action, to be creative, to collaborate, to come up with solutions. And so I decided to do this. And why are we feeling despair? You know, I'm going to go ahead and say that we have class warfare going on in San Francisco. I'm going to go ahead and say that, but I want us to maybe choose a different metaphor that works for us rather than saying class warfare, because I don't want this to be a battlefield, I want it to be a garden. I want this to be a thriving ecosystem. So what happens? What happens is that you have land and like Mid-Market or Western Addition or the Mission where these areas have become a little bit toxic in certain ways because there's been institutionalized racism, so the land starts to not be so healthy. And then you get this influx of culture makers and nonprofit workers and teachers and the people who can afford to live in these areas. And they actually, can you tell I worked in a garden? I reactivated a dormant community garden in my neighborhood as a volunteer. I managed it for 2 years, a New Liberation Community Garden. And I learned about the mycelial network. That's the fungal network. And what happens is that it connects underneath and it becomes the immune system of the garden. And it can actually, at one end something's happening, and it can, if on the other end there's like in the mission something's happening, and then in Western Addition, we can actually learn from each other because we're connected underneath. But what happens, and then you get these pollinators coming in, and we got this really cool diversity of crops. It's great. You got your okra, you got your kimchi, you got your kale, you got, in San Francisco, we got a lot of different styles here. We have pollinators coming in, we have the immune system of the mycelial network. Then what happens? Oh, we did the good work of making the soil healthy. So then, Chase Bank comes in. They cause a whole global financial collapse, right? But they decide, I'm going to come into my neighborhood of Divisadero, and we're going to displace 2 local businesses in order to move in a bank 8 blocks away from another bank. That's how I got my start in local politics, working with Dean Preston, Quentin Mecca, Gus Hernandez. There was a sign saying, just say no to Chase Bank. So I was riding my bike by it, and I was like, you know what? They just caused this global financial collapse. How is it that we're letting them displace 2 local businesses? I'm going to take a stand. And that's how I got activated. But, this idea of Chase coming in, they see all these funky mushrooms like us around, right? And they're like, boop, 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 boop. Guess what? They just killed the whole immune system of the neighborhood because they're plucking out all of the things that are doing the good work to keep it healthy. Then they're planting their GMO monocrop. So, use this metaphor of a garden. This is an ecosystem, and we have these big corporations coming in, and they're taking out the very thing that is giving our garden its life and diversity and culture and flavor. So that's what's happening. I pushed back against that Chase Bank. I was so shocked that Ed Lee's administration, it was his Office of Economic and Workforce Development that said, that gave him the red carpet to come in, and they were supposed to be beholden to formula retail law, but they weren't for some reason. And so it was really disappointing, and I learned the zoning code. Learning zoning code hurts your brain a little bit at first, but if you have a good mentor like I did, or a few, then you figure it out, you realize how it's all connected, and then we go up there, and that's what being a lawyer is, and that's what Ed Lee should be doing as a lawyer who was, back in Chinatown was this community activist who was saying, I could stop any eviction for a year. Where is he now? He says at the Trans March that he's going to stop evictions. Come on, you've had 2 years to be doing that. Don't pander to us. Tell us how you're going to do it, because we don't understand how you're going to do it. We're at the epicenter right now, like I said, of this contractor economy. We're whittling away at the rights of our workers. We need to be figuring out what to do. San Francisco has a great history of breaking the law for some good, good things like, getting people married, right, and gay rights. But then what have we been breaking the law for lately? We say that the Google buses don't need an environmental impact review to figure out what kind of impact that they're having. Why? We do these giveaways. The Twitter giveaway. It's the same thing that happened in my neighborhood that happened on Mid-Market. The guy who was kept that storefront empty for 3 years in my neighborhood. Arizmendi Bakery wanted to move in. A few other shops wanted to move in, but he kept it empty, the property owner. There's no tax or issue for him to keep it empty for 3 years and blight it that way, and then Chase Bank gets to move in. The same thing happened on Mid-Market. Why was Mid-Market blighted? It was the property owners that weren't playing by the rules of the market. They were keeping things empty and taking a temporary loss. And then all of a sudden we give them the biggest cash cow that we could give them, and we reward them for that behavior. We need to be coming up with solutions. I'm going to close by saying, they're saying that it's going to be a cakewalk election for Ed Lee. I decided that the only way that we can combat not having a lot of money is to actually have a lot of creativity and a lot of enthusiasm and have fun with this. And so what I'm saying to do is that we're going to have a cakewalk event in front of City Hall. And I'm asking people to go to yimbyformayor.com/cakewalk and take a survey. A lot of you I already gave these results to from 126 registered voters, but I'm asking people, tell me what the top issues you want me to debate and Francisco debate as your proxy with Ed Lee. I already have 126 people who have said what they want me to debate, and then I put 13 different issues down, which I'll pass out later. The top ones are renting in San Francisco, inclusive and sustainable growth, short-term rentals, cultural preservation. These are the kind of things that we can't let this election slide without going toe-to-toe with Ed Lee and giving it our best effort. And like I said, we really need to come up with creative strategies and work together. I've been working together with Francisco since we both, filed our nomination papers together at the same day. And so we need to fill up those 1, 2, 3 slots together. Thank you.
Please pick up the white cards on this desk, and then you can hand them to folks running. Herrera. Francisco grew up in Calexico, California, where he was politically active at the ripe age of 10. Organizer with the Faith Alliance for a Moral Economy, founding member of the Coalition to Assist Survivors of War and Torture, and co-founder of the Oakland Catholic Worker House, where he assisted refugees from Mexico and Central America. He's a professional interpreter, and he uses those skills to participate in peacemaking efforts throughout Central America, Mexico, and parts of South America. He was co-founder of the SF Day Labor Program, and he's lived in San Francisco since 1988. Francisco.
I didn't remember half of that song. Buenas tardes, good afternoon, everybody. As you heard, my name is Francisco Herrera. I'm walking for mayor. I use the metaphor of walking because when we walk, we smell, we sense, we hear. I know Tim says it's impossible for us to beat Ed Lee. I think we can beat Ed Lee. With Amy and Stuart, we're creating a card that says anyone but Lee, 1, 2, 3. You vote for your 1. I'm putting myself as the 1. I'm asking folks to put Amy as the number 2, Stuart as the 3. And they're going to do the same thing. Ranked choice voting was created precisely to give the voter the power to choose. We are living in an oligarchy city moving towards a tyrannical city. And one of the first things that we need to change is precisely that structure. The Board of Supervisors really has no real power over the budget, and the budget is where the details are. And the love is in the details. As Buck, my good friend, veteran organizer, knows over here, you move money or you move people. What are we here? Are we money or are we people? Yeah. As Tim said, people are not just being moved out in the Mission. People in the Sunset District have full-time jobs at Whole Foods, or Whole Check, some people call it, and are living in their cars. There's 27 children in one of the richest cities in the world, 2,700 children living in their cars or bunched up in sofas and in living rooms. Unfortunately, sisters and brothers, we are seeing San Francisco, the third world city, which it is now. San Francisco is a third world city with a chunk of very, very obscenely wealthy folks who've made money off of our backs, and a group of folks who don't have enough to live here. San Francisco needs at least 300 teachers in the school district who cannot afford to live here. So I won't repeat what our good brothers here have already said. The big problem that's happening here is political will and lack of planning. There is no plan that the Lee administration, call it Willie Brown, call it whoever you want to call it, has. There is no plan. There is no future. But the worst thing, as we've been engaging folks, is that our folks don't have a vision. And I would challenge you, Tim, to think that I think we can win. I think we can unseat Ed Lee. But we need you guys to think that too. But we don't only need you guys to think that. We need what Tommi said. We need to act on it. We need to be at every BART station. We need to be at every bus stop. We need to work as we already won. So our campaign, we're leading it in that way. we're working as we already won. What does that mean? When you already won, what the hell are you going to do, right? When you're a teacher, you confront your classroom, that's when you really realize, do I know what I said I knew, and how do I put it into practice? So we need to work, starting now, like Tommi was saying, that's what we've been engaging part of it. So we have 4 victory points. Winning, unseating Ed Lee, winning the mayor's office. 2, November 3rd, we want to celebrate. We're going to celebrate a victory of establishing a citywide alliance of communities that have a plan. Not a 4-year plan, a 12-year plan. We need a real plan. And there's aspects of that plan already there. There's a people budget that so many of us worked very hard to do, to put together. There's a city master plan that has limits on heights that you can build that at least people have been getting rid of. And there's a delusion that we need density. That's the big D word, density. Well, didn't we have density in the mission? And they kick all that density out. So we need to be able to see, what do I want for my kids, my grandkids, and my great-grandkids, the next 20 years, the next 30 years. That needs to be our conversation. We keep leaving that conversation to the so-called developers, who are not developers, they're destroyers. But we keep calling them developers. What are they developing? Houses like our sister here said, for people who do not live here. I think it's up to 70% of city workers cannot vote in San Francisco because they don't live here. Right. So how do we develop a plan? Land trust is one of the greatest solutions. The land belongs to us. We have to create a spot, like in the mission we've identified 13 sites where we could build decent housing, not towers of Babylon, decent housing up to 3 and 4 floors. If you could build some city buildings from the downtown to the ocean beach that are no higher than 3 and 4 floors, you get your stupid density that is so-called people want. People don't want that density. Google, Facebook, the corporations that are moving people here. There is a horrible thing happening when I see Barbara Boxer, Dianne Feinstein, Ed Lee attacking the sanctuary ordinance that we worked so hard to put together. This is not an ordinance about dogs pooping on the sidewalks. This is an ordinance that saves lives, folks. We have to strengthen that. There are 2 of my brothers-in-law, 60,000 people in the last 6 years have been executed in the state of Chihuahua. 20,000 in Tijuana, in the city of Tijuana. 250,000. There's a war going on in Mexico right now. And if you're seeing the anxiety rise, it's because our relatives are thinking of their relatives. It's because what Tim was saying, our retiring baby boomers are saying, shit, man, I've been a teacher, I've been an enfermero, a nurse, I've been a firefighter all these years. When am I going to get a letter saying my building's been sold? We can't sit like victims. Either we build the political will and across the city, across our neighborhoods, and on November 3rd, celebrate that. So that's our second victory. Celebrate that. Build right now, fight right now, learn who the hell runs what button, pushes what button, and pulls what lever in the city departments. Block every planning commission meeting that doesn't respond. Every building that's going to have a planning commission has a big old sign or little sign on the street that says the date. Get the date. Get us all that we are doing that as a campaign because we're running. We already won. So that's the third victory, to celebrate and to look at those ballot measures, not just the local ones, but guess what? White flight has gone statewide. Now they want to divide the state into 6 sections. Why? Because Latinos are a majority. So you create a little white flight section like the so-called Silicon Valley, which includes San Francisco according to their little state map. So we need to fight that, as well as if we were to win the changes on Prop 13, San Francisco would get up to $700 million a year. So let's plan forward. Let's have a vision. Let's create a vision of what San Francisco looks like in the next 20 years. Yes, you can live the next 20 years if you keep your health and exercise and daily good meals, nutrition going. So, so that's for people who might be saying, well, I'm not going to live 20 years. All right, folks. So, fourth win of this campaign is that we set the groundwork, apart from supporting Aaron Peskin, which I do, apart from supporting Mercury, which I do as well, apart from supporting the progressive folks, we can set the groundwork for getting a progressive majority 2016. We got to get the vote out there. Last time only 130,000 people approximately voted out of 600,000 availables. We can get that voter reg, we can get that 70%, a chunk of it to vote. Muchas gracias, thank you very much. Let's organize.
And we're going to talk about one of the basic civil rights we have in this country are voting. If you've ever lived in countries where you don't have much voting power, you appreciate the power you do here, even though it seems convoluted. And there's ways to suppress front-end voting, which is, busting acorn, and I suppose other ways were making voters wait in line till 2 in the morning and having one voter booth and one bathroom. That's another way, or poll tax. We're not going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the voting from the back end voting, and it's about the software and the software monopoly on our voting rights, really. And to keep voting democratic, you have to keep it public, for a public source for the code of the software that's being peddled at very high prices to counties, and the election officials have to get a grip on this, around, and who's got the money. So they've got people where they want them, and it's making it really difficult. So I'd like you to talk about Harvey Milk and Amiano. We'll start at the beginning. How about that? Because voting is compulsory in Australia. So will voting systems adopt open source? And, talk about open source voting some.
Well, at the beginning, I should say a lot of this work comes from the sustainability activist community. The work really centered in the early days around UC Berkeley, a fellow by the name of Henry Brady, and he was working with Alan Deckert, and they moved the needle quite a bit and designed, Alan Deckert from Open Voting Consortium designed some good systems that now we are seeing pop up as designs in Los Angeles County. So they're still state of the art, and that's what's called an open source ballot printing system. But that was in the early 2000s, and since I got on board around 2004, when we were really seeing the outflow of HAVA, the Help America Vote Act, which put $4.5 billion of public money toward the vendors to provide the electronic voting systems. So my activism around San Francisco has been going on now for about 10 years, and as you mentioned, Raphael Mendelman and Tom Amiano and Chris Daly were some of the early adopters in San Francisco County for the notion that the system should be publicly owned and the software should be viewable by the public to make sure that it's operating properly. And so that is some of the beginnings. Supervisor Amiano at that time put together the Voting Systems Task Force for San Francisco County, and that work has turned out to be valuable in announcing a lot of the concepts that have continued to be validated time and time again. And as a matter of fact, we just saw a few days back the United States House of Representatives has now gone toward open source systems for their internal use.
As has Obama.
The president, who I am proud to say I was with on day one of his campaign, when he was then senator, I briefed him regarding open source software, and I think it was new information for him. So to see it come from that point to him calling for the government to move toward consideration of open source contracts is really a great thing, and now of course we believe our next step is to have open source voting systems, as that is really the most gravity-filled situation that we have for government.
So the software, now let's get back to the software having the very, very difficult codes that where you need a whole room full of software engineers. Even if they do hand you the codes,
Yes.
It'll take a whole room full of software engineers. It kind of reminds me of how the banking system was with their lending practices and making it so complicated that no one could understand it. It's one of those, is it that?
Well,
Is that right?
certainly complication is an element to wise guy behavior. So anytime anything gets overly complicated and the general public can't understand it, I believe it's problematic.